Hello, hello, hi everyone. Super excited to be here. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Sure,
Fantastic,
sure.
thanks.
Doing good.
Great. Yeah, we're happy. We're here on the Black Blockchain Summit 2021. And here we have Black blockchain leaders. My name is Tongai Choto. I'm co-founder of AfriBlocks. We're a global Pan-African freelance marketplace, and I'll be your moderator for this session. Super excited. The topic is enabling Black land and asset ownership using blockchain, enabling Black land and asset ownership using blockchain. And with me here, we have three Black blockchain leaders that are going to lead us through this discussion. So I'm just going to give them, a minute or two to introduce themselves, starting with Chris, then Eden, and then Tony. You can take it away, guys.
Yes, my name is Chris Bates. I have been working in the blockchain space for about 8 years now, I guess. I started working in community management and then moved into cybersecurity and have moved towards research and moved away from working in the industry directly. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Great, great. Eden?
Yeah, not as long as Chris, but I've been around since about 2016, 2017. Initially started working on cross-border transactions using crypto, and then worked at some of the exchanges for a bit, kind of focusing on retail, getting folks onboarded. And now I'm working with DAOs.
Thank you for the introduction. Then Tony?
Hey, how's it going? Been in fintech for about 20 years, doing institutional with State Street and Fidelity, and Bitcoin in 2011 and Ethereum in 2018. And that's when I started my journey with community development and mainly focused on yield generation, which has morphed into what you see in meme coins like SafeMoon. The main communities that I help run are Bankroll Network and Elephant.money. And Elephant.money is the sort of distillation of everything we've learned at Bankroll. And mainly we're focused right now on continuing those yield generation contracts, stablecoin, and with an end game pointed at like NFT marketplace to leverage the stable coin, which is backed by collateralized BUSD and the Elephant Money token.
Great, great. Thank you so much for that introduction. I guess around our topic, enabling Black land and asset ownership using blockchain, I see the two things that come out, which are land and assets. So I'll start with Tony. Let's start on the basics. What is land registry, and what are the current challenges that need to be solved or are being solved by blockchain technology?
I think right now, the biggest issue that you have is with mutable databases, your land registry and ownership can be taken away from individuals, families, organizations at any given time. And when you have a public blockchain solution, then the worries and fears there can be alleviated, especially you have situations where there may be political instability, things going on with, we still have genocide today. So in many instances in Pan-Africa, you still have issues where people literally, you own your house today, you don't own it tomorrow.
Understood. Eden, you can take on the same question around, what is land registry and what are the current challenges that are being or will be solved by blockchain technology?
Yeah, I agree with what was just said. I just also want to kind of add that when we think about these, we'll call the ledger a database, right? There's still someone that has to have that power over who's inputting that information. And so my mind starts to think about what are the alternative ways to kind of make sure that we're removing a centralized authority from these, data sets, whether it be a blockchain or, the way that we manage land registries now. So I think for me, I think that when we kind of expand on blockchain, and we can see that growth happening now, where we're seeing one asset and it's owned by the community, for instance. So like kind of zooming out versus just having a land registry. Let's say there's a home that's owned by, your family DAO, for instance, and you have it managed over, I'm kind of looking ahead. Let's say we've got smart devices and we're managing the property via a system of smart contracts to say it's my day to be in the house. The land was owned by our grandfather, so I own 12 shares of said house or something like that. So I think my mind goes to how can we manage land registries in that way? Because, anywhere in the world, we have corruption. It's everywhere, whether it be New York, where anywhere, it's really anywhere in the world you have it. And so I kind of hesitate when we talk about using blockchain in that way around land registry, because we're still having to assume that we're trusting that same system. We're trusting, whomever is in charge of this permissioned blockchain, right? Or who's putting that information in. Is it in this particular area? Is it the chief? Is it the governor? Who's inputting that information? So I have some hesitancy around that sort of a system, because I think it relies on a lot of the existing kind of issues.
Yeah, that's pretty. Yeah, that's pretty. That's pretty interesting because I guess in this discussion we'll say not your keys, not your land, something like that.
Yeah.
I like that you mentioned community. That'll be my next question to Chris around how can we educate the community that the difference between, is this really your asset on the blockchain or it's not your asset, pertaining to things like, do you really own it, or it's still owned by this corporation that's saying, it's blockchain, but you still don't have, the access to it or the ownership.
So when someone has physical control of something, that's like 95% of ownership. And when we're talking about digital assets, especially relative to land, that's something that becomes a slippery slope, because then you have countries that have squatters' rights. So, for example, if I'm to buy a piece of property in England and I have this blockchain title for it and I'm not living there, a squatter comes in and stays in that home. Well, that person actually has rights over the home, even though I have the blockchain title. So there are elements of the legal ledger that controls the titles being one element, but the actual regulations and laws that dictate how land is traded are another element. So people will get into contracts not knowing the actual legal ramifications of long-term ownership or short-term ownership, or the caveats that come with it. So this is kind of where there are elements of economic exchange and economic interaction that people have no idea about how to go about doing them, and they rush into these things because of fear of missing out. And then you have people rushing into real estate investment, gold investment, blockchain investment, because you see other people making money, and instead of trying to do research on these things, they just rush into it and say, oh, well, how do I, this person did X, Y, and Z, I'll just do that and follow their path and make money. So I think in the rush to have people extracting value, we need to reframe our perspectives and say, is this person rushing to value actually going to do something that has long-term gain, or are they just participating in a short-term fad? And I think it's going to better help the community to be able to step back and start to look at these things and be more judicious about getting involved in a movement rather than just rushing in because
Yeah.
other people are making money.
Yeah, I like that, you know, you're taking it from that point of view, because that's literally what, you know, the summit like this, you know, is meant for, to educate people on things like this. Like, you know, there's this, you know, everyone is doing it. Should we do it, or you should, you know, start to learn from it? Which brings me to my next question. You kind of touched on it a bit, Chris, but I'll pose this to Tony around what the major difference, what's the difference between digital and physical assets? You know, what the connection, where is the connection? Because I think that's something that, you know, our audience really try to figure out, like, okay, I own this land. So what do you mean I should own it on the blockchain? Like, what's the difference? Things like that. So yeah, you can help our audience with that.
So
Correct.
fundamentally, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yep. And just, and I think Chris actually just he touched on that. One thing I would say is, when it comes to digital land, I think that's very similar to what we enjoy today with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, where we don't have this mismatch of ownership. When not, you know, like we started before in the beginning, you know, not your keys, not your crypto, not your keys, not your digital land or your NFT. So there's no, so with digital, you don't have an issue. And I think with physical property rights, I think that's where, and I think Eden touched on this in the beginning, we're going to have to go with solutions like, multi-sig in terms of verifying these transactions. You're going to have a willingness by municipalities and governments to take their existing systems and transition to a solution. And you're going to see solutions where a user or community may have to stake certain assets, crypto assets, against a title, and then also have the participation in a sort of multi-sig transaction with the existing government. So there has to be a willingness by local and higher level government agencies to participate in a solution. And then you're going to have people potentially vote with their feet, because it is a little slippery with, what Chris said.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I guess I'll pose the same question to Eden, but this is also around, we're talking about land. We also want to get a bit into real estate, like, your apartment, your school, into that real estate space. How can people, say, get started, or how can people understand the connection and the differences between digital and physical assets?
That's a really big question. And I think just to, again, have it not focus on things like title ownership, because I think it's a very important but very specific kind of use case. So again, you said schools. So I'm thinking about hotels, or, using your apartment on Airbnb. And one of the ways that I kind of explore, when I property, the example that I like to use is sort of digestible. You think about Airbnb. So if you've ever Airbnb'd your home, you know that you're paying Airbnb for the honor of being able to allow people to come into your home for a set period of days, right? So let's think about that apartment that you put on Airbnb. If you were to have that on, Banana Chain, whatever it is, like that's the organization. And, a day is indicative of one banana coin, right? You could then, you have your home, you've got 365 banana coins affiliated with your home. You can then think of your home as sort of not just an asset, but also a form of like asset generation, because that home can then be rented or, put into whatever blockchain, and you can have it managed by, and I'm thinking hopefully, a couple of years ahead, you can kind of have that home managed. Maybe the insurance for the home is on smart contract. So if the agreement between me and Chris is that Chris is going to stay in my home for 3 banana chains, and we've got it locked up in a smart contract and he damages my door, no offense, Chris, and let's say that costs, in the smart contract, the agreement is 0.10 banana chains, and we can kind of have that arbitrated automatically versus paying, a system or a centralized group like Airbnb for those kinds of services. What I'm trying to kind of illustrate is that we're thinking, I think that when we talk about ownership, it's kind of this binary of like, I own a home or I own 10 coins of this thing. But if we kind of like look at it from a collective, ownership doesn't necessarily need to mean I own this home. It could mean I own stakes in various things. I own pieces of various objects, or like I own a piece of this organization or a piece of this home or my beach house, whatever it might be. We kind of think about it from a collective perspective versus like I own this one thing. I think that's a much better perspective because you can generate a lot more return. And then also it goes back to something Chris said that I really liked. He said, why are we only extracting value? Something along those lines. So when we think about home ownership or ownership in this way from a, how am I providing value and not just extracting? That's, I think also a really helpful way to think about land ownership.
Yeah, that brings me to the next question around, we talked a bit about security, but I also want to talk about privacy, because, when someone thinks, that I'm registering my land online, we're all tech savvy, but, as talk about my grandfather who owns land and we're telling them, their information is going to be online. The next question is, so everyone is going to know that I own this land, things like that. So my question to Chris is, how do we make sure that security is well done? When, there are these companies that are building solutions around land registry on the blockchain, which is great, but how do we make sure, or as a community, go back and look at stuff like their code? Is this information, private? Is this information secure? Is this not another centralized, solution that we're trying to run away from?
I think one of the biggest problems is the illusion of understanding. So you have millions and millions of people who drive cars every day. How many of those people can look under the hood and tell you what a carburetor is, or tell you where the brake lines are, or tell you how the brakes work? Most of them can't. So when it comes to buying a home, how many people can go and tell you what the real estate laws are, tell you what's legal, what's not? Most of them can't. They participate in these activities and transactions with the illusion of understanding, because you can participate, because you can pay for the house, because you can pay for the car. It feels like you understand it. How many people get on the internet every day and don't understand it? Most people don't understand how the internet works. So I think the problem is there is this premise that people need to understand blockchain to use it. That's just wrong, because most of the things that people use, they don't understand how they work. So that said, the issue is not getting people to use it, it's getting the right people to use it, because right now regular people don't do the land transactions anyway. It's real estate agents. So we shouldn't be trying to make this system so that the average farmer, the average homeowner just goes in and sells the property themselves, because that's not how it works now anyway. Mainly because there are rules and regulations that go with selling homes that the average person doesn't have time to learn, so that they end up not doing an illegal transaction or doing something that ends up messing up their own finances in the process. So the reason people go to real estate agents is not because they don't know how to use the internet, or not because they don't know how to go to Remax's website. It's because all of the complexities associated with selling or buying a home are why we have actual real estate agents. So I think the issue is, although transactions and movements of assets can be simplified or made transparent on a blockchain, that process of legal enforcement is something that still is necessary in a superlative layer. So it's like, I can't enforce a contract that I make. That's not the way enforcement works. So if I make a contract with Eden about renting her home, I come in and kick the door down. Who's going to enforce that I need to owe her money? It can't be one of us. There needs to be third-party enforcement. So this is why when we're talking about implementing blockchain solutions, the governments or some sort of third party has to be involved, because otherwise the enforcement is coming from one of the two parties, and that's not actual enforcement. So this is where the systems of infrastructure being available does not equate to enforcement. And this is where if I'm doing business with somebody internationally and I send them Bitcoin or whatever, Ethereum, to send me a widget, and that person does not then send me a widget, who do I go to correct that transaction to then enforce my side of the contract? Well, if there's no legal authority under which we're both operating, I can't go to anyone, which is why most users or most people who are in a situation of purchasing actually want some sort of third-party authority that they can go to. So this is kind of where the future, I think, is, for the sake of protecting people, has to be a combination of open access ledgers, but also authorities that oversee the ledgers. Because again, if we have a dispute and where there is no third party that we can go to, then we have a problem. And this is where there are some problems solved by creating an immutable ledger that's not associated with any government, but then that creates a whole nother set of problems if in fact we don't have a third party to enforce a contract. Because
Understood.
well, I was going to say, enforcement is not the same as execution. That is a very important caveat. A self-executing contract can't be self-enforcing. Those are two different things. Enforcement is not execution.
Understood. I guess the question that I would have is, I'll ask this to Tony, like, how can community be that third person instead of, an organization or say, a company? Now, let's say it's community, people who are already participating in that land registry, in that blockchain technology around, their pieces of land and things like that. How can community be the people that actually govern or manage that solution?
I think this is where we really, and just also in the interest of time, we really, when I say interest of time, I really mean our community is decentralized, our community is digital, our digital selves are more important than in some ways, our real world selves, or where we're actually physically located. We can operate on an even playing field in the digital world. And I think this is a good time for us potentially to transition and talk more about what digital land ownership means. The reality is that governments move very slowly. They require tons of coordination. Sometimes they don't have the budget or interest to participate in these activities. And that's being pretty much proven out. So when we talk about the African diaspora as a whole and what our strategy should be, I think it's more important that we focus on digital land ownership, and that in that case, the sky's the limit. You can participate in ecosystems like Decentraland. You can participate in owning a spaceship or a space station or a region of a planet in Star Atlas on Solana. These are productive digital land and property assets that generate revenue, where you're one of the important things that we believe in at Elephant Money is that we're borderless, and we don't necessarily have 100% focus on this is just for Black people or this is just for African. The largest a large percentage of our members come from the EU and United States. The point is that everyone's swimming together. And when that value is created, it's more important that as citizens of the digital world, that we're all participating together. And you really can only do that once you separate yourself from where you actually live. And then value can actually travel and do what it's supposed to do. People on Axie Infinity, you can buy Axie land right now. And that's borderless. It doesn't matter where you are. You can be in Venezuela, you can be in South Africa. There are people in the Philippines that have used Axie as a replacement for work and labor. So, and those NFTs are productive assets, and they have a sponsorship mechanism where you can someone in someone more affluent, doesn't matter where they are, can purchase a team of Axies and then sponsor those out to people to actually perform in the arena and earn income. And that's a lifestyle. So really, I think the opportunity here is really to, we're all going digital. Physical land is important, but the thing is, if you can earn on the blockchain, then you can change your situation. You can move to a more stable place. Not just, I'll end on this. Because of climate change, the continent of Africa and many other places around the world are being impacted. You can't live where you live right now. People are going to get displaced in a major way. So it's going to become more important that we're actually generating income and have passive income streams from digital land, digital properties, productive digital properties, not just cryptocurrencies, and be able to take those resources and move to a safe location.
Great. I think one thing that I also liked is the mention that most people actually, a very large number, actually maybe 90% of people who use the internet don't really know how it works. So I guess it's because it got to an extent where the usability is super simple, to the extent that people don't even need to know what's behind. So my question to Eden is, I guess you can also mention use cases that you have seen or that you have heard around, that learning curve and that UI, UX, that usability that makes people, want to jump in and makes it all easy. You don't have to think about, that whole technology because, like Chris mentioned, that's not your background. You just own an apartment and you want to get into this, but how do you get into that in the most shortest learning curve as possible?
It's a wonderful question. This is a big issue. I've worked, like I said, with a couple exchanges, and this is the number one question: usability. If you don't fix usability, adoption will not increase. And I'm just talking about the basics of crypto. Level 10 crypto is having your apartment on a blockchain, but like level 1 is just getting started in 101 of crypto. And the interfaces, the UI is so complex. And then we also think about it from this perspective of who's designing it. If it's an English forward or a Chinese Mandarin forward design, those things really impact how we process information. If English is your second language, or if you don't speak English, if a lot of the materials that are being created are for someone whose primary language is X, Y, and Z, right? The adoption curve for folks coming from other backgrounds, it's going to be much steeper. And so absolutely, I think, I can't remember the exact word, but it's airport design, where you're not relying on any words, but it's just something that humans will intuitively be able to understand, whether you're in an airport in Zimbabwe or, anywhere in the world, you're able to kind of figure out what's going on. That's intentional design. And so when we talk about really simplifying UI and UX and making it so that, you said your grandfather was like, why would I put my information online? Let's say whatever was built, if you're just trying to teach him the basics of crypto, when we think about, I'm assuming he has a mobile app, most of the world uses mobile apps versus web apps. So when we think about things like that, are we building mobile-based learning tools first? Are they being built by folks that speak a plethora of different languages or have different experiences? Because that really impacts the design. And so I think today, if you were to go to the App Store and just type in Bitcoin, whatever app you pull up, whether it's from the Coinbases to the more smaller apps, there's still a really high level of complexity. It's still I have to walk friends through it all the time. And so I think we have to really get to the point where we're on this call right now and we're using the internet and we didn't have to log in or do anything. It just kind of worked. And a lot of that is intentional design. So I like to think about these products as being human first and not crypto first. I don't even want to see the word crypto or coin or blockchain. I just want it to be focused on what can the user get out of it? Like, why am I here? I think one thing about, and even that's kind of a technical term, but I think if we were to just kind of think about it from the perspective of how is this going to empower and support the person, whether it be economically or whatever it could be, rooting it in that design versus this is a technological blockchain crypto, whatever the word might be, that can be really to customers, even when we think, or users, even when we think it's not, because we're in it. We hear these words all day long. I think something, I might say, yeah, yield, but not realizing that's off-putting to someone who may not be spending 12 hours a day researching on the internet. So yeah, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I like the term human first. So my question to Chris would be, how people are listening right now, how do they get started? You can go on Google or do your own research, but are there any resources that worked for you that you can recommend to people to go read around? Because again, this is something that people also need to kind of do their own research before they jump in. What are your thoughts around that?
So I think first off, people need to be honest with themselves about what they're doing, because people will get into blockchain technology and crypto and then say, oh, I'm here for the technology, but they're really trying to make money. That's 100% okay, but people need to be honest, because if you're saying you're in it for the tech, but you're really there to make money, then it's actually going to be more difficult for you to make money, because there's all these hoops you have to jump through pretending you're in it for the tech. And on these notes, like one of the issues with simplifying the interface is that a lot of times when you simplify the interface, you sacrifice security. So there are things about what is happening with the move to simplify the interface that then negate any of the benefits for the blockchain itself. So there are things about the movement of the technology that they're not unique to blockchain. The same thing happened with the internet in terms of making things more complex, making things less complex, making them more complex. The same thing happened with computers, Apple, IBM, graphic user interfaces, everything. And so it's more so, where do these technologies fall in our society? I don't think people need to be using them in their everyday life. So for people to try to get into it, it's more so, where is that person at in their regular life, like in their life already? Pivot from that into the blockchain. Don't try to start new, because there's people like me who are seniors in the space. You're never going to catch up with me. I have 2 degrees, working on a 3rd. It's not like I just figured out this thing magically overnight. I've put in years and years of work to learn about this technology and learn about this space. So people like myself didn't just get here overnight. It took years and years to get to this level. So I think if people really want to become experts, they're gonna have to be prepared to put in years of work. It's not something that you learn overnight. It's not something that comes like you just figure it out. No, you have to put in years and years of work to truly understand it. Now, if you just want to make money, then you learn how to trade. You learn how to look at candlesticks. You learn how to do arbitrage, because then you can apply that to Beanie Babies. You can apply that to Pokemon cards. Arbitrage is not something that's restricted to Bitcoin, to Ethereum, to tokens. to stocks. You can arbitrage meat if you really wanted to. So I think what people have to get a better perspective on capital, they have to get a better perspective on technology and people to see how capital flows between people to establish value. Because once you start to understand those things, the way that the blockchain space is developing and the cryptocurrency space, it's a lot easier to see movement being organic or movement being fabricated, because you have people who want to make you believe that you can get in and make an NFT and that'll be worth $1 million. Well, it's possible that you can make an NFT worth $1 million, but just like Beanie Babies, just like baseball cards, comic books, most of the stuff is going to be worthless, while there will be some very high value items that come out. That's just the way collecting works. So it's the same with land. There are pieces of land that are worthless because they're swamp. You can't develop them. Nobody can live on it. So it's land, but it's really valueless because you can't use it. So I think this is where, if people are trying to find value, they're trying to find how to create or discover value. There are things about history, there are things about people, sociology. People have to take a step back and get a more holistic view of the landscape.
Yeah, so we have a few minutes left. I'm going to leave this to Tony and Eden. 1 minute resources that people can use to get started. Tony.
Okay, so I do think that there's an easy button for crypto. I'm trying to solve that problem myself. I've been working on it for quite a while. I think for people to get started, the easiest button, if you don't have any crypto now, I would recommend Celsius Network. If you go to Celsius Network, you can, without knowing anything about crypto, you can purchase crypto. You can turn that crypto into productive assets and earn yield on it. So my recommendation for people is to, obviously establish a position in Bitcoin, establish positions in the top 10 cryptos. From a speculative perspective, that's going to cover your growth side. And then you really want to focus on, because when we're talking about land, for this conversation started out with land, any of these cryptos are still property, and they still can be made into productive assets by earning a return on your investment beyond just waiting for the price to go up and down. So you can do that with the Celsius Network with no knowledge. And then you can dive into more decentralized solutions where you're going to be on Binance Smart Chain, for example, or Solana. I think the boat has kind of sailed with Ethereum. But those are the places to get started. Really look at the Binance Smart Chain, look at things on Solana, and focus on learning about yield farming. You can do yield farming with just stable coins, like you have a USDC, USDT pair, where you can take $100 with no risk and start earning yield on it. And so you're establishing a position, a productive asset, and you're earning return. So that's would be my recommendations.
Yeah, and to Eden, in 1 minute, resources that Black people can use, specifically Black people can use, and to get started.
Okay, a couple places I'd suggest. First of all, I'd suggest reading The Bullish Case for Bitcoin. Great resource, and it kind of goes into why some of these things are important. I think podcasts are fantastic. I will also recommend listening to stuff like We Study Billionaires. They've got a bunch of different content. It's diverse, touches on a bunch of different things in the crypto space. I'd also recommend Medium. I think that Medium is super interesting, and it's medium.com. It has a plethora of different information. The reason why I'm suggesting this is because everyone's going to find the lane that they're interested in. Someone's going to be really interested, like Tony, in yield farming. Someone else might be really interested in the actual blockchain itself, and might want to go out and get a degree, but they won't know until they kind of explore those different sections. Because the space is massive. So I really kind of recommend figuring out what gets your attention and then deep diving in that, whether that's yield farming, land management, remittances, whatever that thing is. Kind of go broad, check out Medium, look into different podcasts, and then kind of zoom in. I definitely recommend folks, friend said, possibly purchase. But before you do any of that, definitely do the work, be judicious, and
Sure.
do the research, and don't just follow. Please don't follow anyone's advice on YouTube. Just do the research and see where that takes you.
Great, great. Thank you so much, amazing Black blockchain leaders. This has been a great, discussion, and we hope, our attendees are also, enjoying this. Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you, Eden, and thank you, Tony.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.